Sri Lankans take off the mask. The purpose of this series of articles will be to show that the Tamil people of Sri Lanka are deeply committed to this country and their cultural identity. It is not a parallel history to the history of the Sinhalese people, but a complementary history with deep cultural ties to Sinhalese and Buddhism. An island with only 270 miles between its northern and southern borders and 140 miles between its eastern and western borders had to engage in a bitterly fought war between the Sinhalese and Tamils for more than 30 years. There, the Muslim people were also heavily influenced. The irony is even more striking when the parties to the conflict need the intervention of a third country to be able to talk to each other. The tragedy of this gap between the country's major communities is even more striking when we compare this with what is happening in India, which is geographically described as a subcontinent. The post-British era saw the partition of India on the eve of India's independence, 1947, and the formation of Pakistan as a separate country. This was a bitter lesson which the Indians could not forget. This may be the reason why India was forced to form a union between linguistically diverse groups like Sikhs on one hand and Malayali, Kerala, on the other. The reality of split. The situation in Sri Lanka demands close attention. And one has to accept the reality of the split, but more importantly, examine how this split came about and how it grew to this extent. The hard truth is that no sincere effort has been made to understand each other. Worse still, the history of this country has become a major factor in this gap between communities due to a number of misrepresentations of history. However, in recent times there is a tendency to talk about Sri Lanka as a multicultural country. This multiculturalism was recently emphasized by a dignified person like Malwathu Mahanayaka Thero. If we focus on the history of this country since the middle of the 19th century and, in particular, on the history of this country since its political independence, 1948, it will be revealed that the concept of national integration was completely non-existent and was only used at an official level after the Armistice Agreement in 2002. From this date, the Ministry of Constitutional Affairs bears the additional title of national integration. At this time of sincere efforts to resolve the ethnic conflict, it would be useful to know how deeply the non-Sinhalese ethnic groups consider themselves Sri Lankans, with an inseparable bond to this island. The purpose of this series of articles will be to show that the Tamil people of Sri Lanka are deeply committed to this country and their cultural identity. It is not a parallel history to the history of the Sinhalese people, but a complementary history with deep cultural ties to Sinhalese and Buddhism. When it comes to history, it is worth looking into how these racial differences became so sharp and deep. The immediate reaction of many is to point the finger at what they consider to be the history of this country. It is a well-known fact that historiography determines what is written as history. In the way the history of this country is presented, attention is paid to the Sinhala Buddhist division. Historians of ancient and medieval Sri Lanka have pointed out the need for this attention. Analyzing the writings on the history of Sri Lanka, especially in the 20th century, reveals that the concept of colonialism has not been included in the historiography of Sri Lanka. This needs clarification. The island has been under colonial rule since the beginning of the 16th century. Today there is a tendency to highlight only British rule. But from about 1521 to 1796, the coastal areas were under Portuguese and Dutch colonial rule. The impact of Portuguese rule and Dutch rule resulted in an unprecedented religio-cultural collapse. In fact, British rule was milder than Portuguese and Dutch rule. This colonial influence has determined our view of the pre-colonial period. The pre-colonial era could be understood as one that preserved local cultural traditions. If we consider the historiography of Buddhist historical writings in the pre-colonial period, it is easy to understand how ethnocentric histories were conceived and written. This is not the place to discuss the evolution of this historiography in detail, but we must keep in mind the ideological responses of the Tamil, Muslim and Sinhalese peoples to Christianization and modernization in the 19th century. Muslim identity. A review of the history of Sri Lanka in the 19th century reveals that after 1833, with efforts to structure British rule with the active support of education provided by Protestant missionaries, local religio-cultural groups began to assert their individuality without interfering with the overall British colonial hegemony. It is interesting to note that the first steps towards such religio-cultural expression took place among the upper caste Hindu Tamil people of Jaffna. Aramaga Navala, 1822 to 1879, highlighted Saiva Tamil integration. The intensity of missionary educational activities was felt more in Jaffna than in other parts of the island. There was also interaction with Tamil Nadu. Around the 1870s, Sidi Leb of Kandy argued the need to protect Muslim identity through Islam and Arabic through the journal, Muslim Nation. On the Buddhist front, responses to Christianization existed earlier. But the movement for Sinhalese Buddhist religio-cultural identity was given fuller political-cultural expression by Anagarika Dharmapala in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. Thus, all 3 major communities opted for an internal religio-cultural identity within British colonial rule. It was during this time that the process of politicization began. Indigenous participation in the colonial legislative process was based on traditional representation, that is, members were appointed to represent the interests of upland Sinhalese, lowland Sinhalese, Tamils and Muslims. Access to representative politics in Sri Lanka began to strengthen. Elder suffrage, granted in the early 1930s, was consciously used to affirm the underlying religio-cultural identities of various communities. The process of politicization led to majority rule, a concept introduced to us by the British administrative system. The evolution of Sinhala nationalism and control of the majoritarian concept learned through the British parliamentary tradition became the cornerstone of Sri Lankan politics. Marxist intervention with its concepts of class did not penetrate deep into the soil of Sri Lanka, and the main Marxist parties accepted popular nationalism as political social progress. Attempts by Sinhalese nationalism to define itself in terms of language and religion led to Tamil responses based on language, but not so much on religion. It is an analysis of history that Sri Lanka's first independent government's attempt to define the citizenship of this country led to the formation of the Federal Party in the year after independence, 1949. Nationalism. Thus, differences began to snowball and mutual distrust gave the snowball momentum. The Constitution of 1972, unfortunately, one of the greatest Marxist intellectuals of this country, Dr. Colvin R. de Silva's work, there was no constitutional reference to the Sri Lankan Tamil community. The Federal Party now stood for an independent Tamil state. Again, the greatest analysis was a man who strongly believed in non-violence. J. V. Chelvanayagam made this statement. The political backlash soon led to the emergence of Tamil militant youth movements. They took Tamil Eelam as a foregone conclusion. The war that followed was inevitable. Here too, it was a tragedy that the war aimed at Tamil militants began to destroy the lives and property of the Tamil people. The lack of understanding, the lack of misunderstanding, was now complete. The country is now beginning to realize that its future lies in its composition. And at this juncture it is important for the Sri Lankan Tamils to let their colleagues know about their commitment to Sri Lanka as their homeland and their future. The Tamil word used in geography and history is Ilinkai. The widespread use of the term Ilinkai and the understanding of its common origin led to the endorsement of the term Ilinkai in all official documents. In fact, it can be argued that it is because of this friendly understanding that Tamils are able to recognize this island as their country. The constitution at the time recognized the use of the term. However, in recent times, there has been a demand to use only the term Sri Lanka and drop the term Ilinkai. At least in the English media, the term Eelam has acquired ominous significance for the Sinhala reader ever since the late Marvin de Silva, in his characteristic journalism, called the fight against the tiger-led state the Eelam War. In the minds of the Sinhalese people, this word connotes separatism and it is LTTE associated with attacks. The role of the mainstream Sinhala media in creating doubt in the minds of the Sinhalese people is significant. The situation is worsened by the lack of an institution to help foster understanding between the communities. And it is also true that Sri Lankan Tamils have made no effort to communicate the true meaning of the terms they use to the Sinhalese. In the separatist demand made by all the militant organizations, the term Eelam exists, but it is a composite term with the qualifying word Tamil. Thus, the term is Tamil Eelam. Actually, TELO stands for Tamil Eelam Liberation Organization and the short form is LTTE stands for Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. The active part is Tamil Eelam, which means the Tamil part of Eelam. The term Eelam is a synonym for Sri Lanka, which dates back to BC 200 to AD. Used in Tamil literature since the Sangam period dating back to 250 AD. Patanapalai, a long poem of the Sangam era about the Chola king Karakala, mentions the various imports stacked at the port of Pukar. Two items identified are Elathu Anai, Kalakatu Akam. The former refers to food items from Sri Lanka and the latter refers to Kalakam, Hida, products. We do not know what foodstuffs were sent from Sri Lanka to the port city in southeastern Tamil Nadu. Tamil Brahmi inscriptions refer to Elatu Katumbikan, a householder of Eelam. Katumbikan is the Tamil word for Gihi, and hence refers to a Buddhist. Incidentally, this reference indicates that there was a free flow of Buddhists from Sri Lanka to Tamil Nadu and vice versa. Later Tamil inscriptions, particularly one of the Chola period, refer to Sinhala Ila Mandilams, meaning the Ila regional unit of the Sinhalese people. It is clear that the Sinhalese people themselves are connected with Eelam. AD it is known that Eelam was an administrative unit during the Chola period from 1017 to 1070. The term Eelam has a cultural meaning and the first Sri Lankan poet to participate in Sangam poetry gatherings was a poet named Elathu Putan Thevan. To this day Sri Lankan Tamil literature is known as Elathu Nafiyam. The contribution of Muslim and upland Tamils falls within the Tamil literature of Eelam. Especially when referring to Sri Lankan Tamil literature, Tamil people as well as Muslims are proud of this term. Knowing the etymology of the term Elam may come as a big shock to many. Learned Tamil scholars like late Professor Kanapatha Pillai are of the opinion that the word Elam must be derived from Hela. Thus, in true sense, Elam is an integral part of Hela heritage. After the 1972 Constitution, when the Federal Party pushed for the formation of the Tamil United Front and the declaration of a separate Tamil country, the term Tamil Elam became less popular. Tamil militants popularized the term Tamil Elam. Unfortunately, only the word Elam is retained in this composite form, and the word itself is now taken to mean a separate Tamil country. The long presence of the Tamil people in this country and their devotion to this island as their homeland has led to the use of the term Elam to denote the entire island. The Tamil word for Sri Lanka is Ilankai. It is the Tamil form of Lanka. In Tamil, there was no tradition of la being the initial sound of a word. Thus, the vowel sound E comes first and the word is pronounced Ilankai. This term is quite old. Silapathakaram, a Tamil epic poem that deals with the history of Patini Kanaki, worshipped in the Sinhala Buddhist tradition, describes how King Gajabahu brought Patini worship to Sri Lanka. The famous line from Silapathakaram goes, Kadal Chul Ilankai Kaiwahu Venthan, and the word Ilankai is used here to refer to Sri Lanka. Silapathakaram today is generally dated to AD, taken as a 5th century work. Thus, the term Ilankai is also used to refer to the island. The Tamil word used in geography and history is Ilankai. The widespread use of the term Ilankai and the understanding of its common origin led to the endorsement of the term Ilankai in all official documents. In fact, it can be argued that it is because of this friendly understanding that Tamils are able to recognize this island as their country. The Constitution at the time recognized the use of the term. However, in recent times, there has been a demand to use only the term Sri Lanka and drop the term Ilankai. This emphasis on usage has led to an interesting situation where when the Tamils prefer to refer to the Sinhalese government, they refer to it as the Sri Lankan state and the security forces as the Sri Lankan state forces. It is clear that these institutions have nothing to do with the Tamil people. If we are to develop understanding between communities, it is important to recognize and respect the cultures of the other group. Depriving Sri Lanka of the use of the term Elam, Ilankai will only create alienation from this island, and anyone who wants a peaceful solution understands the sentiment of Sri Lankan Tamils. It is wrong to attribute non-existent meanings. Tamil Elam and Lockyer, India-Sri Lanka Defence Pact in American Strategy. Tamilnet, Sunday, May 18, 2025, 1:31 Greenwich Mean Time. A copy of the Defence MOU signed between the Indian and Sri Lankan governments in April 2025 has recently been leaked by several Sinhala parties on an English media website. Both the Indian and Sri Lankan governments have refrained from officially acknowledging or denying the contents of the agreement. However, one has to think about what is the deep danger of the message of the leaked copy and the secret American ACSA agreement since 2017 to the Tamil people as a whole. What is its geopolitical significance, and how it should be understood for the next course of action among Tamil Nadu? The occupied Elam Tamil homeland and the Elam Tamils abroad during the Mullavikal genocide commemoration period. The content of the main ACSA, Acquisition and Cross-Servicing Agreement, agreement with America since 2017 has been kept secret until now. The draft of the SOFA, Status of Forces Agreement, which was controversially leaked in 2019, did not come into force later. India-Sri Lanka Defence MOU has been signed in April 2025 against the backdrop of the urgent need for America to implement it. Bonds in geopolitics are formed and groups are managed through security agreements. The rise, fall, and even subjugation of the world's small countries or stateless nations is determined by the competing military alliances of imperialists. Therefore, it is important for struggling nations to properly understand the intrinsic nature of security treaties and act against them when they are detrimental. It is common for a stateless nation or group of people to be subjected to permanent destruction by imperialists and the agent states they manage, without action. Immersed only in limitless electoral politics, and facing protracted genocide in various forms. This danger is currently facing the Tamil nations. It is certainly possible to change this general situation by a struggle against the imperialists and their representative states. In contrast, this cannot be achieved through the electoral politics of representative states or agreements made with them. An armed struggle is not just a struggle. Struggle ranges from civil disobedience to armed struggle. One form of struggle is that the Elam Tamil struggle is handled as a struggle for self-determination along with various stateless nations in the multipolar world system. Such planned activities are very important in facing the world system which is manipulated by narratives. The form of struggle is often determined by the political trend led by the imperialists and their representative states. Thus, these agreements and electoral political trends indicate that the time has come to decide what will be the framework for the next struggle of the Tamil people. In 2007, U.S. Sri Lankan dual citizen Gotabaya Rajapaksa urgently needed an ACSA agreement with America to escalate the genocidal war. Following this agreement, the U.S. completely prevented the supply of weapons to the LTTE by sea in international waters, immediately providing satellite intelligence at sea to the Sri Lankan Navy under U.S. guidance. For this purpose, under American guidance, the Sri Lankan Navy operated a deep-sea vessel hired from India with its drivers. America and India together decided the end of Mullavikal. The 8-page AACSA agreement, 41 pages with annexes, that the U.S. signed with Sri Lanka in January 2007 had a 10-year term. With the help of the late Mangala Samarawira of Singapore Resolution, FAME, the ACSA agreement, which was due to expire in 2017, was expanded by 83 pages to suit the U.S.'s Indo-Pacific military vision and reworked to allow for an indefinite extension. In the same way, in 2019 America made a strong effort to further expand the SOFA agreement, which was established in 1995 to provide military training by its special forces personnel directly from within the island to the Sri Lankan army against the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam. When its draft was leaked, there was strong opposition. There were splits in the ruling party. It was later abandoned as criticism of the draft intensified and Sirisena messed up with China for a secret security agreement. Then, the Indo-Pacific military outlook was solidified during the first term of U.S. President Donald Trump. India joined the American Quad Group centered on the Indian Ocean. The U.S. Secretary of State and former CIA Director Mike Pompeo pressed hard for a SOFA agreement with Sri Lanka as soon as possible. With all the attention now on China during Trump's second term, America will need this agreement again. This will be understood if one observes the 2025 situation of the American Military Political Affairs Bureau, Political Military Affairs Bureau. Against this backdrop, the India-Sri Lanka Defense Agreement has now been designed as a guiding agreement for how the US should structure the SOFA agreement that it will next seek to expand. If American imperialist pacts are the main game, the Indian Pact is only a sub-game that plays into that strategy. Regardless of the background to which the India-Sri Lanka Defense Agreement has now been leaked, it should not result in an escalation of activity against the agreement. The leak will also be used to bolster the theory that it was manipulated by Sri Lanka as a co-party. That is, the outcome of this leak will give Sri Lanka's ruling party more opportunity to build the narrative it wants among the Sinhalese people. The action of Indian leader Narendra Modi, who bowed at the feet of Sinhala Theravada Buddhist monks, should also be taken into consideration here. By affirming the sovereignty of Sri Lanka with parallel recognition of Indian sovereignty, the message of American imperialism is to treat the island of Sri Lanka with mutual respect without trivializing it as the sovereignty of a small country. Therefore, this agreement and its leakage will be used to prepare the Sinhalese people for imperialist interests. On the other hand, it can be said that India has used its sovereignty through this agreement to strengthen the sovereignty of Sri Lanka. Matters such as coastal movements related to the island of Sri Lanka, especially ports like Trincomalee, are included in the US-Sri Lanka ACSA agreement that has already been concluded. In particular, the next agreement the US is going to expand with Sri Lanka will be about the sovereignty of US forces on the ground. These agreements describe how the US-India, US-Sri Lanka, India-Sri Lanka security axis should be set up in the current multipolar world politics, where there are conflicts between the alignment against China and the rise of the global South. Economically bankrupt, the representative government of Sri Lanka, adopted by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, has no other options. But the Elam Tamil nation, which must embrace the position that it can survive as a nation only if it struggles, and only then can it protect itself from permanent genocide, is left with different rules and options. What it says about Sri Lanka's internal affairs should also be seen alongside the agreement's understanding that India fully respects Sri Lanka's sovereignty. It is not difficult to understand that the main message embedded in the content of the 12-article India-Sri Lanka Defence Agreement is to again deeply influence both the Tamil nations on both sides of the Pak Strait, especially the occupied Elam Tamil nation. The message written in the agreement is that the political solution of the Elam Tamil people is an internal affair of the Sri Lankan government. There is no interference from neighboring countries in anything like international justice, and no interference in local affairs. This should also be seen as a message that the Indo-Sinhala nationalist governments have slapped the face of Tamil Nadu as a whole. Tamil Nadu as a state has a ruling party unable to steer Indian foreign policy towards Elam Tamil self-determination, sovereignty and justice for genocide. The parties who claim to be an alternative to it are also headed in the wrong direction. Both these Tamil Nadu parties have given up on Tamil sovereignty politics without challenging India's foreign policy and talking only about Indian federalism. All these parties have no will, knowledge or ability to deal with the basic problem of Elam Tamil people. Thus, Tamil politics is locked into electoral politics and the preservation and acquisition of power. Sovereignty politics remain dormant. A Tamil Nadu that cannot build a broad mass movement for the Tamil people, for the Tamil nations, is not a Tamil Nadu. In this political vacuum, Sinhala Theravada Buddhist mega-nationalism pretends to be a nation and even more a civilization and takes over the geopolitics of the imperialists and continues its journey. A number of diaspora Elam Tamil groups, caught up in factionalism, Tamil Nadu social network myths, electoral politics at home and pro-imperialism, must take note of this situation. This is the message that all the Elam Tamil politicians who are losing their people in the Sinhalese electoral politics should feel that they will build and protect the Elam Tamil nationality only through electoral politics. The leaked India-Sri Lanka Defence MOU calls both governments historic countries in its introduction. Of course, those with knowledge of history, civilization and culture will understand that neither of these are historical countries or historical states. From the beginning, the state of Sri Lanka was created as a unitary state for the imperialist interests of Western countries. It should be recalled at this time that on December 15, 1948, Russia used its veto power in the Security Council against Sri Lanka's membership in the United Nations. Sri Lanka became a country in the modern world system only after the blocked United Nations membership was granted in 1955 by the United States in negotiations with Russia. The reason Russia used the veto power was because Britain had prepared the island of Sri Lanka for its military needs. During the time of Sirimavo Bandaranaike of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, N.K. Diaz had decided. Like the Rajapaksas, the left-wing party, Janata Vimukti Peramuna, is copying and following it. Earlier, the United National Party DS since Senanayaka's time, the genocidal system of the Zionists had started to be copied. This is a right-wing trend. It was the position of the late Indira Gandhi that she would never agree to the formation of a Tamil Elam. She even hesitated to declare the concept of genocide as India's official position. Providing weapons training to Tamil Elam militant organizations was an option she wanted in the bipolar world political environment to get the Sri Lankan government to get its way. Indian imperialism initially acted with overconfidence that it could divide and disable the Elam Tamil organizations through its intelligence agencies. Later that confidence was lost. After the end of the Mullavikal genocidal war in 2009, the Indian side has regained that confidence. Thus, it is an anecdotal historical fact that in recent modern political history, from the Zionists who determined America's foreign policy to Indira Gandhi, who took a pro-Soviet stance, to later Indian leaders, Elam has taken a position adverse to Tamil sovereignty politics. In this way, the India-Sri Lanka Security Treaty as it is now written is another step in the defense of the sovereignty of the unitary state of Sri Lanka created by Britain and adopted by America. Even if the current multipolar world political environment has created a different situation, it will not do any good as long as the Elam Tamils remain inactive. As for the island of Sri Lanka, the current geopolitics in the Indian Ocean is not determined by China and Russia's encroachment on landlocked northern India. Geopolitics based on the Indo-Pacific strategy for island and small littoral states is at work here. As long as the inaction of the Elam Tamil faction continues, the nature of these geopolitics will continue to favor Sinhalese nationalism. Without a struggle for sovereignty for themselves, the Elam Tamils, who currently believe only in electoral politics, will have no other choice but to be permanently subjected to genocide under the aforementioned law if they do not struggle any further. Liberation will be possible only if both the Tamil nations start activities to assert their sovereignty in their own unique way, with a thorough and deep understanding of contemporary history, geopolitics and policy positions on collective rights. The 2025 Mullavikal commemoration time again reminds us that Elam Tamil liberation can only be achieved if we resume action against imperialism without any hesitation. The Tissa Temple and the Tamil community. Kankisantharai Tahitisa Temple is illegal. Who owns the land? Seeking justice buried under history. No archaeological remains, but our story is here. Silently traveled maps, screaming people. Studies, field trips and the opinions of historians and archaeologists over the past few months have revealed many facts about the Tissa Temple. Historical background of the temple. The Mahavamsa, which is considered to be the oldest historical source in Sri Lanka, mentions 3 temples built by King Devananya Tissa who ruled Anuradhapura. They are Jambakola Vihara, Madigal, Tissa Maha Vihara and Pachinarama Vihara. Apart from legends, the next oldest document written about the now controversial Tissa temple is Mudaliar S. in his book, Ancient Jaffna, published in 1926. These are the facts that Rajanayagam had mentioned about the Tissa temple. In his book, he has written his guess that the Tissa temple mentioned in the Mahavamsa may have been located in this place called Tissa Malwa. Later, on December 18, 1946, Abraham Pereira of Galagama Arakchi, who was a resident of New Jagoda area of Colombo, deeded 1.25 acres, 20 perches, of his land as a donation to Nagadipa Naga Vihara, Jaffna. All this is written very clearly in the land deed he gave. Then, in the same year, 2 monks who travelled from the south pointed to a bodh tree there and said that there must be a Tissa temple here and built a small temple. And then, without any conflict with the temple, the villagers performed religious rituals with great devotion together with the Buddhists. At that time, many Sinhalese Buddhists who worked in the Kankisantharai cement factory and port lived in the surrounding areas, and some said that there was also a Sinhala school in the Kankisantharai area. Finally, Vesak festival was celebrated in this temple even in 1954. However, due to the racist riots of 1956, the Buddhists living in the northern province left their homes. At that time this temple was also abandoned, and later the temple was completely destroyed. During the height of the war in the 1990s, everyone who lived in this area had left their homes and fled as refugees. Then resettlement took place after 2015. The people have gradually resettled in their freed lands. But the land where the temple is currently located was not released. Later, in 2017, under the chairmanship of Mr. Reginald Curre, who served as the governor of the Northern Province during the then Yahapalana government, a foundation stone laying ceremony was held for the rebuilding of the Tissa temple on the 1.25-acre land belonging to the temple. But the villagers said that no temple was built there later. Then, in 2021, when the COVID laws come into effect, suddenly a 100 feet high Buddhist stupa was built there with the help of the army. After that, again with the help of the army, various buildings were illegally constructed on the people's land, the landowners said. History that cannot be hidden from maps. A map published by the Sri Lanka Survey Department in 1959 has caused many controversies. Also, The landowners said that this map is an important evidence to say that this illegal temple is legal. Therefore, we went to the Sri Lanka Survey Department to resolve these controversies and confirm the key evidence and verify the information. The concerned 1959 map is a map based on the 1 inch per mile map prepared by the British first on a scale of 1 to 63,360, and before that. The first map of Sri Lanka prepared by the British from 1896 to 1924 is in the Survey Department, said the Chief Surveyor S. Mr. Samarasinghe said. Then we went to the archives of the Survey Department and consulted the documents about the first map of Kankisantharai area and the map updated in 1959. The official who was there refused, saying, "The maps you requested have been inspected by the police, army and state intelligence agencies. Showing these to you may pose a threat to Sri Lanka's national security. Therefore, give us a letter in writing. We will discuss and inform you." Later we submitted a Right to Information (RTI) application along with the letter they requested. Without giving up our efforts, we went to the Archives Department hoping that this old map might be available in the archives of the Sri Lanka Archives Department. After several hours of searching, we found the relevant map. It is the first map of Sri Lanka drawn by the British in 1902-1903 and then updated in 1924. We checked it thoroughly. No temple in Kankisantharai Tahitisa area was mentioned in that map. All the old temples and Christian churches around the currently constructed illegal temple are mentioned in the map. Then, we met the former Director General of the Sri Lanka Survey Department, PMP. We contacted Mr. Udayakanta and clarified some doubts about the maps of Sri Lanka. Regarding the updating of maps in particular, he said that every map is updated after a period of time and everything from maps drawn with old technology under the new metric 1 to 50,000 system to maps made using satellite technology after the 1980s are updated again after a period of time. He also explained that the new metric maps were later prepared based on the old inch per mile scale maps. Thus, it was confirmed that a Buddhist temple had been built at this place after 1946, as the villagers had said earlier. How did 1.25 acres of land become 15 acres? The temple mentioned in the 1959 map circulating on social media is a temple added after 1946 when the Survey Department updated the maps. At that time, the temple was on a 1.25-acre land. An image of a small temple is marked on the map to indicate there is a temple on the 1 to 63,360 map. The sign mentions the same temple that was on the 1.25-acre land. But later, the temple on the 1.25-acre land has been completely destroyed. Also, the entire area with the symbol of the temple on the map has been acquired by the public under the false pretenses that it belongs to the temple. Another place on the same Kankisantharai map is indicated by a cross that there is a Catholic church. Although the symbol used for it is big, the church is located on a very small plot of land. After resettlement, all the lands around the church were not claimed as their own as shown in the map. We took all these historical evidences to a senior historian and archaeologist, who did not want to be named, who is accepted by both the Tamil and Sinhalese sides. First, he asked what we found out from our research on the history of the Tissa temple. From field studies to archival department, we told all the details. Then he said, "The day this problem started, I knew that this was an illegal Buddhist temple built on a land belonging to the Tamil people. But I could not do anything. Using all the military and political power, they completed the construction of the temple. Now a problem has arisen. The demolition of the built temple can cause big problems between the Tamil and Sinhalese people. Therefore, all other lands should be freed so that the landowners are not treated unfairly. The government should provide compensation and other lands to the people who lost their land due to the illegal temple, he said. He further stated that the Tissa temple mentioned in the Mahavamsa is located elsewhere and there is no archaeological trace on the land where the existing illegal temple is located. Venerable Navagala Padumakirthi Tissa Nayaka Thero, the head of Nagadipa Naga Vihara, had also mentioned this very clearly. On lands belonging to innocent Tamil people, monks from outside districts have built a temple illegally with the help of the army. The land belonging to the real Tissa Vihara has been deliberately taken over by the people, he said on his official social media account at the beginning of the ongoing problems. Currently, the only hope of the landowners is that the new government will do justice to them. The Jaffna District Member of Parliament of the National People's Force, Mr. Ilingamaran, commented on this matter and said that the Minister of Justice has directly intervened in this issue. Various political forces are trying to use this for their personal political gains. People have faith in the new government. We will protect that trust. We are confident of delivering justice to the people in a short month, he said. This issue, centered on a small Buddhist shrine, reflects all the deep divisions of racism in the entire country today. These are not just 16 people's lands. It is the identity of a society, its history and its tradition. Denying people their land rights can erase all memories of one ethnic group. But no matter how many years pass, the truth remains. The rulers must one day answer the voices of those who hope for justice. Press release of the Makal Sale organization that organized the unextinguished lamp protest held against the Semani mass graves and enforced disappearances to dispel the darkness of deaths. Hello everyone. The non-extinguishing lamp protest organized by Makal Sale, volunteer organization to demand international justice for the Semani mass grave and create awareness in the Tamil society had a bigger impact than expected on the last 23rd, 24th, 25th. Relatives of the enforced disappeared from northeastern provinces, 3 religious leaders, students of Jaffna and Eastern universities, Tamil civil society organizations, Tamil political parties, journalists, media, overseas Tamil organizations, NGOs, sponsors who provided water, food and snacks, political social activists, artists, Walligamam East and Nellore regional councils, Jaffna Municipal Council, fuel donors, those who provided tents and light and sound facilities, those who spread the information about the protest on social media, friends who were a human chain at the last moment. Well-wishers and others, we bow our heads and thank everyone on behalf of the Makal Sale organization. What you did was timely help is greater than the whole world. On the last day of the protest, which was held to continue international attention on the forced disappearances and mass graves of the Tamil people, including Semani, several unpleasant incidents took place. The way supporters of political parties and organizations unable to maintain democracy behaved contrary to basic human morality in order to assert their political power. Contained a secret agenda that changed the course of the protest and contributed to diminishing its power, which put the organizers in dire straits. It also led observers outside the protest to raise questions about the organizers. In such a backdrop, we, as organizers of the protest, express our sincere condolences to the relatives of the disappeared. The public and the political elite who have been inconvenienced and dishonored by these unprovoked and deliberate acts of indecency. Unaware of the severity of the pain of the long, tearful and difficult journey of the family members of the enforced disappearances and the justice of their struggle, several unscrupulous YouTube channelists, with no media ethics, acted in a most despicable manner to create an external environment to deliberately create excitement or chaos for the purpose of increasing the number of views of their videos. This also emphasizes the need for parties planning protests in the future to focus on special mechanisms to handle such fake journalists. Despite such pressures, the real situation of the protest was made clear to the people through shared videos and live videos from the place where the protest took place. In this situation, without submitting to any party or organized political agenda, the internal purpose of this protest is only to demand justice regarding the enforced disappearances and human mass graves, including Semani. The morality behind this request and the importance of holding this protest during the visit of Volker Turk, Commissioner of the United Nations Human Rights Council, to Jaffna. As a result, people started gathering at the place and this protest reached another dimension. The unquenchable lamp burned in the hearts of all. You may know that the light of the unquenchable lamp also shone in Batacaloa and Trincomalee. We are heartily thankful to all those who organized this promptly as per the need of the hour. Thus, the unquenchable lamp informed the world of the need to dispel the darkness surrounding the enforced disappearances and the Semani mass graves. It was beyond the efforts of the organizers who called for this protest to change the agenda of the United Nations Human Rights Council Commissioner, whose agenda was until then only to visit the excavation site of the Semani mass grave, and to bring him to the site of the protest, which is the long-standing hope of the people who participated in this protest and those buried in these graves. It is also the spirit of people. Those spirits are speaking even though they are buried. The earth is divided and demands justice. The Commissioner of the United Nations Human Rights Council, who came to the place of the protest, bowed 3 times to the unquenchable lamp that had been burning there for 3 days and sprinkled flowers in memory of those buried, showing that he was sensitive to the pain of the protesting people and their demands. This can be considered a victory for a spontaneous public protest. Just because he accepted the copper sheet containing the 6-point demands of the protesters, or just because he showed respect, does not mean that these people have received justice. Instead, the victory of this protest is that the doors of conscience of a person holding a key position in an organization representing international countries have been knocked, and the people have spontaneously taken the first step for a long journey. We tapped the conscience of the whole world. Experience shows that our fair demands for justice are drowned out by the political interests of pro-government parties. Therefore, we tap the conscience of every human being in the world and demand the justice we want. We believe that the doors of justice we ask for will be opened after many generations or so. In the last 15 years, people's demonstrations were held on various occasions demanding political rights and justice for the Tamil people. The gathering and dispersal of the people fluctuated over time. It can also be observed that the chart is moving downwards in recent times. This decline may affect the political aspirations of the Tamil people. Therefore, People-based protests such as the Unextinguished Lamps protest are essential in the current situation. Understanding this need, our sincere thanks to all those who gathered in Semenia on the last 23, 24, 25 days. SJV, who is known as the father of the Tamil nation. The statue of Chelvanayagam, SJV Chelvanayakam, erected in front of the district secretariat in Mannar city centre was vandalized and its head decapitated by a mob in the early hours of June 25 in Mannar. This is a reminder that even symbols of peace and resistance are targeted when people's identity and history are attacked. Israel influence. Sri Lanka's indigenous people are Jews. Israel's target for Sri Lanka. Israeli rule in Sri Lanka. TJS News Online June 28. Sri Lanka's indigenous people are Jews. Israel's target for Sri Lanka. Ella Town, hilly area. There is a restaurant called Chill Cafe on the main road. Beside it is a signboard leading to a laundry shop. Going in that direction is a narrow path into the jungle. A 5-minute walk will lead to music. It is music not suitable for Sri Lanka. At the end of that road is a house. A yellow flag flies in front of it. It is also an inappropriate flag for Sri Lanka. There is a washing machine in that house. Tourists can wash their clothes there. Do you think it's the laundry room? No, it is a Shabbat house. Now take a good look at the first name on the name board above the photo above. It is in Hebrew. It is Beit Chav. Tamil, Sabbat Ilam, Sabbath house. A Shabbat house is a Jewish moral school that promotes Judaism. The loudest music there is Jewish religious music. That flag is a flag associated with Judaism. There is a library in that house. It has Jewish religious books. There is a Jewish priest in charge of that house. Now cut that scene and go to Aragambe town. There is a church called Mabasa. If you go there on a Friday night, you will hear a huge crowd and noise until the early hours of the morning. But you don't understand the language of that noise, for they speak the language of the Jews. Yes, next to the Aragambe Mosque is a Shabbat house where Jewish religious prayers and sermons are held. Now cut that scene. If you go to Weligama Beach, there is a restaurant where the tourist hotels are. There is a synagogue on the second floor of the restaurant. A synagogue is a Jewish place of worship. There are a couple of Jewish religious leaders responsible for it. It doesn't just serve food. Jewish religious classes are held there on Sundays. Special campaign classes are also held from time to time. There are even Jewish religious practices attended only by women. 200 Jews celebrated together in a recent Jewish religious celebration. The priest in charge says the goal is to have 500 people celebrate together soon. Colombo is no exception. A house near the Cinnamon Red Hotel is a Shabbat house. It is the first Jewish religious preaching center established in Sri Lanka. Why are there 4 Jewish religious preaching centers in Sri Lanka, 1 in the central part of Sri Lanka and 3 around Sri Lanka in the coastal cities? But under the guise of business premises. How can Israelis stay in Sri Lanka and establish Jewish places of worship, saying they will run restaurants? Aragambe is an important tourist center, a place famous for surfing. You may have heard the news that a few months ago some people were arrested for plotting to bomb Israelis. Are there that many Jews in Aragambe? Yes, there are so many Jews there that they complain to the police that they are causing trouble by gathering at night for prayers. More importantly, It is so dominated by Jews that local businessmen who have been running hotels and restaurants there for a long time cry that Jews are taking away the tourism business. How are local businesses influenced by Jews? When Jews come in large groups, they receive the same services conducted by Jews. They even bring in the doctors they need from Israel. They buy and use their own vehicles. Autos, even scooters, are owned by Jews. Jews start and run businesses in the name of local people. Due to this, local businessmen have to cry that Aragambe tourism is being abandoned by the local people. The above pictures are business premises in Aragambe. In the first picture of it, under the word offer, in English, yes friend, you have a discount, written in Hebrew, says a lot. Arugam's increased security after the U.S. Embassy announced last October that Israelis could be attacked has hit tourism in Aragambe hard, and locals say the security clampdown is pro-Israeli, affecting other tourists and local businesses. There has been a fear that the future existence of Muslims has been threatened, especially in the area where Muslims live significantly and the Jewish places of worship established near their mosques. When searching why Israeli Jews are so interested in Sri Lanka, many other surprising things were discovered. It is clear that a world-famous Jewish website has tried to indirectly confirm that the indigenous people of Sri Lanka are Jews in an article written about why Jews should go to Sri Lanka. They say that Sri Lanka is the place mentioned in the Bible as the Garden of Adam and Eve, and that is why the name Sri Lanka, which means the Great Island, got its name. They say that Mount Ararat, where Noah's Ark rested after the Great Flood, is Mount Ararat in the Bible. They also say that the port called Tarsia in the Bible is the port of Gaul. Image: the Jewish port of Tarsia in the Bible. This is the port of Gaul. So do they say that Sri Lanka is the land of the Jews mentioned in the Bible? According to the Bible of the Jews, there was a Jew on a Phoenician ship that came to Sri Lanka in the Second Church period, i.e. 560 BC. AD in 1154, 4 of the 16 members of the Sinhala King's Council were Jews. They say that there were 3,000 Jewish families in Sri Lanka in the 9th century. After that, Jews increased rapidly during the Portuguese, Dutch and English periods. And that Sri Lanka was built by Jews. Even if they are lying, they are telling a little bit of truth. It is true that some Jews came and did business during the English period. It is true that 3 Jewish brothers planted tea plantations during the English period. But they lie that it was the Jews who introduced tea in Sri Lanka and boosted Sri Lanka's economy. It is true that Marie Mucius Higgins, the first principal of Mucius College, a major school in Colombo, was a Jewish woman. But the school is an example of how important Jews are to preserve their identity. The contemporary Jewish journalist who found out that the name plate of that school has a logo similar to the logo of Hitler's Nazi army, spoke to the current principal and wrote a letter confirming that it is not a Nazi logo, but a swastika, a symbol of the Buddhist religion. The fact that Sri Lanka has come to a state of doubting even the swastika of the Buddhist religion and researching it also conveys an important message. The next important example they show to confirm that Sri Lanka is a place where Jews also have rights is the Borella Cemetery. The graves of Jews buried there in the last century are identified using Hebrew inscriptions. More importantly, the fact that the Jews who held high positions in Sri Lanka in the last century have no information written down is a testament to how systematically they document their identity. Jews express concern that the house of Anne Ranasinghe, who died in 2016 as the last Jewish woman in Sri Lanka, is not given due importance. Image: the house where Anne, the last Jewish woman in Sri Lanka, lived. Who pays for Shabbat homes? A project called Shabbat Lubavitch, mainly started in the 1700s, has successfully established Jewish religious preaching centers in Sri Lanka for nearly 300 years. The headquarters of the project is located in America. Although their purpose is said to be to provide Jewish sermons and Jewish food to Jewish tourists, it is doubtful that they developed businesses centered around those Shabbat homes. Countries like India and Thailand also have Shabbat houses. However, the attention of the Jews has turned towards Sri Lanka. To recognize Sri Lanka as an indigenous Jewish land, they identify places in their Bibles as Jewish places. Now they are expanding their business and religious places in major tourist centers. They are so interested in Sri Lanka that they even offer a direct flight from Israel to Katunayake Airport in the latter half of 2023. More importantly, they partner with local businessmen and start businesses. Thus, at one time, they started businesses little by little in Palestine. Whether this is true or not is up to you. One is clear: dear Sri Lanka, take a long, hard look at what's going on in the chimneys. Skeletons of children. Someone who still wears a school bag. Babies buried in shallow graves. If this doesn't shock you, if it doesn't trouble your conscience, what will? You once cheered for what you call war heroes. But what do you say now when the land itself reveals what they left behind? Didn't most of you vote for those accused of war crimes? Didn't some of you celebrate the end of the war with milk rice while tens of thousands of Tamil civilians were killed in Mullavikal? When you raised your voice for justice, didn't many of you say, we have big problems like petrol, gas, electricity? Now, when the children's bones are unearthed, do you still look away? Would you do the same if it were your child? If it is your own child? This is not just a question of history. It is a question of humanity. At this moment, silence is not neutrality. It is a favor. Sinhala translation of the speech delivered before the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. Walker Turk, emphasizing Sri Lanka's continued pressure and accountability for war crimes and human rights violations. Can you imagine getting a message that 19 dead bodies were found 100 meters from your daily route? That is what is happening now in Semani. The bodies of 19 people, including the bodies of 3 children, have been found. They are not fighters, not adults, just 3 small children. While I express my support for those fighting in Semani, I would like to mention one of the pitfalls mentioned by the Human Rights Commissioner. The trap of impunity in Sri Lanka has oppressed the people of this country for a long time. I am not here as a lawyer or with legal authority. Instead, I came to tell the stories of many people in the Northeast. The 2011-2014 THURSMAN and OISL reports have concluded that there is clear evidence of war crimes and crimes against humanity in Sri Lanka. Moreover, symbolic incidents such as the killing of the Mathur ICF humanitarian worker, the killing of 5 students in Trincomalee, and the abduction of 11 youths by the Navy, which gained worldwide attention, have not been solved till date. Justice for the Easter Sunday attack is just a dream. Against this backdrop, impunity and lack of accountability is no exception in Sri Lanka. Instead, it has become the norm. We did not voluntarily turn to the international community. Instead, we turn to the international community because we have no other choice. The reason for this lack of option is that every government to us in the Northeast has consistently broken promises and failed local mechanisms to address our problems. As the Human Rights Commissioner pointed out, the lack of trust stems from the failure of domestic institutions. These institutions are corrupt and run on lies without adequate resources. I would like to warn of a new discourse that is currently being created both locally and internationally. With the formation of a new government after the last election, they are trying to portray Sri Lanka as a conflict-free paradise. The international community blindly believes that the arrival of a new government will solve all the social problems in Sri Lanka. If we honestly observe the reality and the current situation in the Northeast today, it is clear that the basic factors that led to the past wars are still active today. For example, land acquisition and land grabbing are still happening today. Since the Gazette issued 3 months ago, from Tahiti to Kurundamalai, from Mailatharamadu to Mannar, our land is being acquired daily. Militarization continues to increase today. As I said earlier, Semani is not a monument or an archaeological site. Rather, Semani is a practical testimony that exposes the inefficiency of government machinery to today's world and calls for our attention to this great disaster today. 16 years after the end of the war, we are still digging up the bodies of many, including children. The question before us is this: do we dig out the truth? Or is the truth buried within? UN Human Rights Commissioner, I offer 2 suggestions. First, I call for the renewal and strengthening of the Sri Lanka Accountability Project with international monitoring and accountability, and to ensure the participation of international jurisdictions in this project. Second, recommend the establishment of an independent public prosecutor's office in Sri Lanka. It should be completely independent from political interference. This should be implemented with the technical assistance of the United Nations. Embassy representatives gathered here support accountability by voting in favor of the UNHRC resolution against Sri Lanka next September for an international investigation and internal institutional reforms. Finally, I will reiterate what the UN Human Rights Commissioner said. Peace cannot be built on the tomb of impunity. In a peace without justice, impunity will become a policy. To remain silent would be aiding and abetting a crime. We owe more than our silence to the mothers who are still searching for their loved ones and to the young children found in Semani. When fighting for accountability and justice, accountability cannot be considered an option to achieve true reconciliation. Instead, accountability should be seen as essential, not subject to privilege. Thank you. #Semani #Mullavikal #Tahiti #UNHRC #Human Rights. United Nations Human Rights. United Nations Sri Lanka. A big doubt I have had for many years is that when Mr. Sumandiran said that there was no genocide, where did the other members of Parliament, including Mr. Sridharan and Mr. Srinivasan, go? If they speak against Sumandiran Sir saying that what happened is a genocide, will they have constant diarrhea? Or do they not have the courage to oppose a single person called Sumanhiran? If the opinion of a single person Sumanthiran against 15 in 2015 and 09 in 2020 persists for years, will everyone else be offended? Chanakya's Chanakya means that Chanakya of the East gave a very clear explanation regarding the formation of local councils in the north with the support of those who could not join his party. If this is the case, Mr. Sridharan of Jaffna Kilinishchi electoral district will refer these questions to Mr. CVK. There are no ministers or deputy ministers in local government councils, only chief minister and deputy chief minister, deputy chief minister and deputy chief minister. Here, Chanakya says that the Tamil Arasuk party has captured both the above posts with the support of the EPDP in the assemblies. However, we can't wake up the rogues who are pretending to be sleeping paper. Let's beat them and pass tongue out. Do you consider it prideful to throw Govinda into the water without being able to argue against and refute one person's opinion? The Hinduva process of attacking Indian Buddhism. Distant movement solitary Hinduism. https://x.com/alcon_hun_t=kpkdqtl89kqm9 SRK coming to Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan Buddhists and some monks try to break ties with gods. It is not easy for them to break ties with it. Kakirawe Sudasana Thero, Gamunu Jayantha Vananayaka, lauded occasions with the Hindus. A person who isolates Hindus by omitting the other religion as a Western perspective without Christians and followers of the ancient Bible. And tell people that it was Buddhists who killed Tamils. But not sure it will work. If you have money, you can buy millions of followers. But the glory of our writing is that 77% of our non-followers are interested in our posts' biceps. Olcott's rewards of Buddhism. As mentioned in previous articles, Olcott was born in a Protestant family, but he has shown interest in what Westerners refer to as paranormal or supernatural. America's most ideological company has been built with Mrs. Blavatsky. According to Mrs. Blavatsky, all religions are born from the same root. Absolute consciousness is its root. But Mrs. Blavatsky has not distanced herself from her Russian Orthodox Christianity. For her, everything is under the Russian Orthodox religion. That religion also basically claimed an Asian mind. We must understand the difference between Mr. Olcott and Mrs. Blavatsky. Mrs. Blavatsky's idealism originated in an Asian mind. Olcott's absolute idealism is based on a mind nourished by Western science. Western science is based on Greek Judeo-Christian thought. Western science is abstract, but everyone can see the resulting technology. What is important to Mr. Olcott is what everyone can see. As a Westerner in the late 19th century, he wanted to understand absolute consciousness with a practical Western scientific eye that was visible to all. He has thought about Buddhism from the point of view of Western science. After Olcott came to Sri Lanka, he saw Sinhala Buddhism with a frustrated mind. Therefore, he was not impressed with the practices of Sinhala Buddhism. We don't get these practices from 6th century Hinduism, but from the culture of the Yaksha people. The demons of this country are called demons by Vijaya and Vedikas. It is said about a demonic people who came from Persia to the land of the Vedics. Those people are depicted in Ajanta paintings. But it cannot be said that those demonic people and the demonic people of this country are the same. Whatever it is, Olcott is disappointed with Sinhala Buddhism. Olcott wanted to eliminate the so-called unscientific side of Sinhala Buddhism. It is also to introduce certain elements of Christian culture and put Buddhism in a position to compete with Christianity. Apart from that, he did not want Protestants to convert to Buddhism. Highlighting individuality over collectivity and eliminating monks were not in his agenda. Monks were not agents between Buddhists and Nirvana, like Catholic priests were agents between God and people. It is not possible to remove collectivity from Buddhism except in the realization of Nirvana. Protestantism cannot adopt Buddhism and Buddhism cannot adopt Protestantism. Mr. Olcott's anti-Christianity was something he got from Mrs. Blavatsky, but she also could not free herself from Western science. She also tried to understand the absolute consciousness through Western science. It may have been something she got from Mr. Olcott. Mr. Olcott received certain things from Mrs. Blavatsky, and Mrs. Blavatsky received other things from him. Olcott's Christian opposition stopped at one point. It is clear that Mahu accepted the importance of Christianity and tried to put Buddhism in a position to compete with Christianity. But it is clear that Mrs. Blavatsky had more opposition to Christianity. That is the difference between Mrs. Blavatsky's Russian mind and Olcott's American mind. In order to compete with Christianity, Olcott, who worked to make Buddhism visible to everyone, introduced things like Vesak cards, Sunday schools, etc., took steps to establish Buddhist schools as well. But it was also done in the school model of Christian culture. Ananda College became only a Royal Buddhist college. Mrs. Blavatsky did not agree to this arrangement. A rift arose between her and Mr. Olcott. She left India for Europe in 1885, before establishing Ananda College in 1886. The last days of her life were spent writing spiritual books. What I call Olcott Buddhism is the Buddhism with the above characteristics introduced by Olcott. It is not a so-called Protestant Buddhism. The main reason why Protestant Buddhism cannot be created is that Buddhism has never been modeled after Catholicism. Protestantism arose in opposition to Catholicism. There is no pope in Sinhala Buddhism. Buddha preached to follow the Dharma itself and not to follow a leader. This feature of Sinhala Buddhism is still present today. Buddhism and Buddhism can be different for different people. But Sinhala Buddhism does not have a Dalai Lama just like a pope. There is no Sinhalanus in Olcott Buddhism. It is a so-called internationalist Buddhism. It has visible features of Western science. But there is no abstract thinking in Western science. Greek Judeo-Christian thought is foreign to it. It wants to compete with various Christian religions, including Catholicism. For that, Sunday schools, daily schools, Vesak greetings, devotional songs, etc., and Western science were taken from the Christian culture itself. Tried to make Buddhism scientific. But Sinhala Buddhism did not absorb some of these things from Olcott's Buddhism. Sinhala Buddhism was not internationalist. It was not scientific either. Although Olcott does not believe, the tooth relic still works in Sinhala Buddhism. Sinhala Buddhists accept the so-called non-scientific karma and panabhava. But there are a few Olcott Buddhists, their successors, the scientific Buddhists, and Tambaya Buddhists in this country. Some belong to more than one of these three types. These people cover up their incompetence in Western science by selling Buddhist monks. The Kalama Sutra is the Bible of scientific Buddhists. There is a scientific method to it. But none of these people can become a member of the Royal Society of London, which they admire. Some of them say war is not good for the Sinhalese. These people hold an ideological dominance today. Because of them, Sinhala Buddhists have obstacles in building their ideologies. Because of them, in the end, a favorable situation arises for Tamil nationalism. Some of them are against Tamil racism, but they cannot build an ideology against Tamil racism. This article is not submitted to newspapers, websites, etc. that only publish my selected articles as per their requirement. But no one has a problem presenting it to their friends. This results in the knots of Don David Huartharana. Learned English, learned Tamil, learned Sinhala, division of heroin into North and East. In the afternoon of May 18, 2009, Rupavahini News said that the war was over. But another war is coming to the north. The war will end and they will get cyanide and drugs from him. This is a post-war management strategy, but it is a youth-destroying drug. This is now used in Gaza. This is a Western strategy to undermine the youth. Therefore, it is to control the people who come together in a struggle. It is an unethical practice. It is said that in the early days of Sri Lanka's post-war, the army was allowed to pass through the roadblocks of the Powder Army in the north and east, and that it was operated on the basis of high political support, and that it was taken care of to seep the rain from the sandy soil to the northern society. Should we wait for these unwise measures? Colony construction and thinking as elephant conflicts and forest clearing, which are the economic trigger of Sri Lanka. Since 1815, the British governors in this island have contributed to the construction of plantations and colonies to reduce the population, elephant population and animal population. The construction of coffee plantations after the clearing of forests and the construction of tea plantations after the epidemic situation can be seen. It is a responsible feature of Sri Lanka's human population exceeding the island's capacity that the animal population as well as the elephant population will decrease. That is why the population grew to 62 lakhs after 1940. The population capacity of this island should not exceed 6 million. If it is more than that, it should affect the forest and animal population. Due to the politics of Sinhalese nationality after 1948, this cultivation and the construction of colonies were done against one population group. It is a matter that the Tamil people, the second largest population group in the island, have suffered. It can be described as a competition between the Sinhalese nationality of the Sinhalese parties and the Tamil nationality of the Tamil parties. It was ultimately an unarmed operation. An example of this was the caste division rooted in the entire Sri Lankan Tamil society. With the colonization of the entire Sri Lankan Sinhalese society, the caste according to the Western culture. The Senkadagala kingdom then turned to the aristocratic families based on money and on two sides, and then became a society of aristocratic families based on one money. But the Tamil society in Sri Lanka did not belong to that turning point. It was due to the Indian and colonialist influence. With the growth of the population, after 1948, the nationalist political development did not develop. When the politics between the nations developed, the UNP and SLFP parties created new Sinhalese colonies, Buddhist, through the rapid movements. It was an extension of the clearing of forests during the colonial period and was a blow to the Tamil and Muslim people who owned the land in the colonial period. It still happens. Resettlement is something that must be done after 200 years of birth. Due to the construction of these colonies, the elephants became extinct and the elephants invaded these artificial colonies. This is the cultural genocide perpetrated by the British during the colonial period by the Sinhalese parties who got Sinhalese nationality to the black and whites, and it is implemented after 1948. For the sake of other races, today it is being implemented by all the Sinhalese parties in Sri Lanka. The Tamil parties never acted to stop it. It is a question why. The Sri Lankan citizen was never told. All these Sri Lankan citizens must come together to stop this. This island can only support a population of 6 million people. In the past 10,000 years ago, this island was a single jungle. The elephant has traveled all over this island. Humans prevented it. Is it fit for human habitation? Thinking, we do not know if Anagarika Dharmapala did any service to the country. They and Sri Lanka ruled Sri Lanka from 1815 to October 2024 because the black and whites ruled Sri Lanka. Mahavamsaya is also a myth. It is not practical to build Sri Lankan history on one basis. After that, today Sri Lanka has become an NGO paradise. Although 75% are Buddhists in Sri Lanka, the other 25% are followers of other religions. The preachers who think that they are delusional and evil say that it is a wrong opinion. It is read that those who believe in the Hanbali clan from the community who believe in the Islamic Quran are delusional and should be saved by turning their souls to God. Till today, there is no institution for religious education in Sri Lanka. Religious education is not the Contemporary and International Studies Department that the Pali and Buddhist University has. The study of world religions and existence is an essential factor in Sri Lanka. By not doing it in Sri Lanka, thousands of human lives have been destroyed. 1. Were you aware of the Buddhist philosophy of Sri Lanka, which has been sharpened like a double-edged knife since the colonial era in Sri Lanka? 2. Have you studied religion and the foundations of religion in addition to Buddhism? 3. Why is the flow of ideas in Sri Lanka blocked? Sex and money are not taught in schools. Zionism, Israel is such a shackled country. 4. When colonizing the land of Tamil and Muslim people after 1948. Are you aware of the resettlement of Sinhalese people with the support of the government from the Mahaweli development projects and the Galoya business? There is more to come. This is what Israel does after 1948. 5. Why was the wrong image created in the minds of people of other religions not taken into consideration due to the inclusion of Buddhism in the constitution of Sri Lanka? Decreasing population in Sri Lanka. 6. Is Sri Lanka still a British colony? 7. Why are the laws of Sri Lanka not the same for all people? 8. Is it accepted that education in Sri Lanka inculcates some stubbornness in children's minds? 9. Why are monks included in politics in Sri Lanka? 10. Isn't Buddhism in Sri Lanka a colonial virus? Other religions also belong. Do you agree that the government of Sri Lanka needs to be persuaded to admit that Sri Lanka is a country full of weeds? This is something that the Sadhu Buddhists and monks in Sri Lanka do not want to accept. This is definitely a question that must be asked for the development of Sri Lanka. It is a good thing that you are doing for humanity in Sri Lanka 210 lakhs. Religious extremism and brainwashing should be avoided. Today there are 35,000 monks in Sri Lanka. Buddhists in Sri Lanka should accept this. Society is changing rapidly. Isn't a government institution essential for religious education in Lanka? Economic problems in Sri Lanka. It is not possible to keep problems inside Sri Lanka. All the industries in Sri Lanka need an investment of $1 trillion to develop. If not, it's a dream. The total sum of the projects that came in Sri Lanka after 1978 is $15 billion. Vietnam receives $15 billion in investment in 1 year. The main reasons for not being able to come up with applications. Unresolved land issue in Sri Lanka. Shortcomings and time management problems in public service. Non-digitization of public service. After 2009, the army released land problems. Sri Lanka's largest landowner government. Lack of land in Colombo and suburbs. Overpopulation in Sri Lanka's 65,610 square kilometers. Population density of 347 per square kilometer. Strict environmental policies. Unfriendly rules for investment. Signing agreements to maintain 70% renewable energy by 2030. Lack of trade agreements. Land release issues. Sri Lanka's annual trade gap. Problems in tax policies. Excessive brain drain. Changes in the dollar. Geopolitical reasons. Indian, Chinese and American power plants and power plants in other countries. High public debt. Comparative company regulatory deficiencies. Government policies change more than 5 out of 5 years. Government policies should remain unchanged for 30 years. The solution to this is investment or borrowing. Borrowing is not successful. Application is necessary. But everything above is anti-application. This is a loop. Take control. To move towards a production economy with 1 GDP, a lot of sacrifices need to be made economically, socially, environmentally and demographically. 1800 Europe, 1920 Japan, 1950 Australia and New Zealand, UK, 1980 China, 1990 India. That sacrifice was made. Now 50% more countries have increased environmental pollution. Sri Lanka is not ready for this at all. Sri Lanka is a country that will face a demographic challenge in 2050. From Galle to Colaba to Trincomalee, 24 million people should be accommodated. Use of other cities should be minimized. 2050 RDA, MCC. In the next 10 years, the largest number of people in Sri Lanka will reach the age of 18. 35 lakhs each. The government should think about this. The unemployed rate may increase depending on the economic situation, but if the opportunity is seized, it will be right. The government mechanism should definitely come to an effective place within the period of 2025 to 2028. The best thing is to reduce the population and go to the service economy instead of the production economy. E.g., Singapore. If Sri Lanka's GDP per capita goes from $4,000 to $13,000, Sri Lanka needs to increase 3x. It will take 30 years. After around $13,000, the journey is. After another 40 years, you can definitely put $80,000. Sri Lanka's population cannot stay at 24 million. The problem is that Sri Lanka's 6 million people will decrease. 30 years war lost $250 billion equals $750 billion. Now, if the economy is developing, the population of animals and humans cannot increase together. One must decrease. If animals must increase, people must decrease. One is the logic, one is the environment and the economy. E.g. Hong Kong. When the total population of Sri Lanka is 6 million in 2230, they should be limited to only one major city. I analyzed the geopolitics and global situation well, but I thought it was impossible to move forward without adding something to it. That means 47 or 44. That means that such countries are proposing a large number of such countries. This is so powerful for America, so powerful for China, so powerful for India. What is the problem with this small country? It is the only state where the sea passes through this country. Like I said, only 250 to 300 ships a day. The world's busiest shipping route, which travels to the east and far away, is located not far from our Hambantota. For 2 or 3 sea miles, we should be charged a certain amount by all the ships that travel. So far we have not charged that amount. It is collected by a company based in Britain. Think about 200 new arrivals per day. But we have to do it on our own coasts, on our water screen. Ships need to travel through certain maps, sea mapping, only if we do that mapping. We will get it. It is not allowed to do it because of Britain and India. But India is controlling a part of that area because we don't have the capacity for it. We are not a country that should be in debt. Not only these two things, but also the local waters belonging to Sri Lanka. We have an economic zone. This is 200 sea miles. This is a United Nations agency, UNHRC. We are allocated 200 miles, but about 10 years ago. We got an opportunity and the whole world agreed to change these waters. According to the agreement, we currently have 21 miles, which is our land month, which means 8 times as much as the land. But we have now claimed that we should get 27 times from that area, then we should get 27 times by 2025. In fact, by spending money on the people who had been handed over the contract to the imperialists, it was delayed until the last minute. Finally, with the intervention of the Navy and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it had to be submitted a little late, so it took another 5 years. They are corruption and now we have to wait until 2030. But we are going to get 27 times the coastline. This piece of cashew in this sea means that there is a great treasure in this ocean of Sri Lanka. All the chemicals, metals and hydrocarbons on this seabed mean that Sri Lanka does not have the technical ability to extract these very valuable stones. Countries are looking at this piece, that's why they name it. Mr. Vansa Samaranayake said very clearly that the next century is the Indian Ocean century, militarily and economically. Whoever controls Sri Lanka controls the East. This was also said in the Second World War. It means that whoever controls Sri Lanka will control the entire East. That's what the British are going to do. Japan is trying to get Trincomalee in 1987 to get the port from here and control all the bases in the east. Why that means India can invade Sri Lanka at any moment to control it. Because it is not for India, we are very important to India, we are very important to America, we are very important to China, we are very important to Singapore. There is an economic value in Sri Lanka in this way. We are the people who live on a treasure. Without taking that treasure, this alone is enough for us to become the strongest country in the world. It is not only because of that value that we analyze why this is so valuable. It is because of that value that we have so many problems and India is giving birth to the LTTE. What helps a little is what the LTTE is doing. India wanted another eastern or western country to come and stop ruling Sri Lanka, so if they want to maintain the rule, they have to create an external problem. We have to stop our development in the development. The first thing we did is that the terrorists will develop their upper castes and then they will use it against the main nation. So the LTTE starts like that, evolves, develops and develops an international army in Sri Lanka. Either the Indian army, India wants to keep the Indian army, or the American army. This group also wants a friendly group to enter this country and come under the guise of stopping this debate and do the peacekeeping work they do in Haiti or Mali. That's why they never thought that they would win the war. They always told the Sri Lankan forces that even at the end of this never-winnable war, even though we are about to capture Kilinishchi, where victory is visible, they say that we have the same end. But we were encouraged by what he said and we prepared our forces to face the obstacles that arose with the rain. They went to such an extent that they broke the banks of the water-filled tanks and artificially created floodwaters to attack our soldiers. But our forces were prepared to face the obstacles that came with the rain. They went to such an extent that they broke the banks of the water-filled tanks and artificially created floods to carry our soldiers away. They tried to take the LTTE team with Prabhakaran, and for that they kept a ship. A lot of people may not know that Vijaya Nambiar, who was Ban Ki-moon's chief executive officer at that time, discussed it. Yes, he came to Sri Lanka about a week or two before we won. When he comes and talks with our government, he is the one who negotiates with Prabhakaran and other people. Why did you try even at that moment? Because I gave the order to put on 4 security guards, as if the security ring at the beginning was standing together on the high seas, because we know what we will get. If Prabhakaran had saved the group of 40,000 LTT organization inside the terrorist, it would have existed. It means that these incidents are still being tracked, but when the military power of the LTTE was depleted, they were fighting more at the same time. That is an international battle which is greedy for this Sri Lanka. A group including the West and India had launched a big operation against Sri Lanka internationally along with the LTTE war mechanism. I know very well that to fight for it, we had to fight physically on the high seas, on land, and internationally. Took the initiative for that. Former Foreign Minister Laxman Kadiragama should be remembered with respect. We had a team to support him and we had pretty much won that battle. 33 countries tried to ban LTT. Some countries have stopped giving, and we have been able to control this even internationally to some extent. We stopped giving military aid like that, and we were able to control this internationally to some extent. It is good to have such a foreign minister. But with his death, that whole opportunity was lost again. After that, they are implemented internationally very successfully. It is understandable that now we have sacrificed about 30,000 lives to somehow defeat this LTTE war in this way. It won't be long before the lagoon is established on the 19th of 2009. On the 22nd, the Secretary-General of the United Nations is coming to Sri Lanka, not this meeting. At that time, our government, which was excited by the war victory, approves a joint statement. He says immediate humanitarian aid should be provided to the displaced people. We hope that they will soon be resettled, rehabilitated and reconciled. An intervention for them is not only nations from the United Nations, but also large non-governmental organizations and international non-governmental organizations providing relief to these people. One plan, because at the end of Prabhakaran, he says I will lose, but this fight will continue. The young people who can continue this fight for another 20 to 25 years join the LTTE as children and send a large number of third-level LTTE members to foreign countries at the last moment of the war. They are sent to carry on this terrorist fight for the future. That is how the leader of the LTTE, called Vinayagam, goes to France at the last moment in Sri Lanka. It was the LTTE leader in Norway who tried to create conflicts in Sri Lanka in the past 5 or 6 years. It is the leader called Ariyavan who has been putting pressure on many governments and pumping money to international and national non-governmental organizations and causing these problems in this country. This is what the LTTE broadcast after the war. The members who were here to lead that fight, so this group came together to Sri Lanka. A special session is usually held on May 27th, which is a week after coming, or in September or February, these groups hold a special session. In that special session, it is said that a leading group is coming as if against us. We will defeat it, as he said. When we defeat it, those people will say that the Sri Lankan army is doing a humanitarian operation very well. And to find a political solution so that this does not happen in the future. So that is the enforcement of the 13th Amendment as said. Mr. Mahinda promised them by word of mouth, but he did not try to do it until 13. They are trying to do it at the Human Rights Commission on the 27th, but beyond that. It cannot be done by waiting for 13 days with the ongoing fight that groups like us have had in Sri Lanka. That's when we really start getting accused of war crimes. Then what do these people do? At the same time, Kumaran LTT, the leader, becomes the Prime Minister and appoints the ministers and establishes the Dream LTTE state outside the country. Those people think that they are helping me with their money, wealth, power, and voting rights. They are helping me. As he said, their agenda is different from our values. They want to divide the North and East and separate us, while we are killing each other. Do you think that a separate peacekeeping force has come to support both of them, or that they have divided the LTTE? Those who know economics can tell how the people in the North and East live with the resources they have. How do we live? The government is losing 3/4 of the coastline. Finally, Tamils are not racist and Sinhalese are not racist either. This is neo-colonialism. Countries that are directly involved in Sri Lanka, India, UK, dear, China, countries that are and have been indirectly linked to Sri Lanka, Japan, Norway, Canada, France, Israel, Singapore, countries with pro-LTTE Tamil diaspora. These are more reasons. Shipwrecks at sea, Easter attack, part of the struggle, the reasons for imposing sanctions on Sri Lanka, helping India in crisis, rebellions 1918, 1971, 1983, 1989. Why is everyone following this Keju Keller? 1. Marine resources. 2. Land resources. Sri Lanka has no profit but no loss. If they don't even give each other, if Sri Lankans want this island, Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim burghers should stay together. If you want to recover Sri Lanka, don't betray. The historicity of Tamil Buddhism in Sri Lanka has not been a topic of public attention, at least in the south. But President Ranil Wickramasinghe's recent statements on this matter have again sparked interest in it. The former head of the Department of History and Political Science at the University of Colombo, Professor GPV, according to Mr. Somaratne. The ancient history of Buddhism among Sri Lankan Tamils is entwined with preconceived notions related to the recent ethnic strife between Sinhalese and Tamils. In his published paper titled, Tamil Buddhism in Sri Lanka, Mr. Somaratne states that a number of Buddhist archaeological sites in the northern and eastern provinces of Sri Lanka have led to controversial claims and have been subjected to politicized interpretations as conflicts escalate. Both sides transgress the bounds of academic impartiality and argue with the aim of promoting their own side's claims, the academic wrote. According to Mr. Somaratne, archaeologists, including a leading Buddhist monk, have tried to ascribe a Sinhala Buddhist origin to certain archaeological discoveries made in the provinces where Tamils live, while other scholars have interpreted a purely Tamil heritage or Tamil ownership for the Buddhist ruins found in those provinces. There are writers who claim the entire island as the heritage of the Tamil people, while there are others who claim the island as a Sinhala Buddhist heritage. Even scholars of international repute have fallen into this abyss, writes Mr. Somaratne. The scholar argues that after the British census, ideas of ethnic divisions became more deeply rooted in Sri Lankan society. Where otherwise relatively cordial relations existed between the Sinhalese and Tamils during centuries of peace, religious differences did not generally inflame ethnic tensions, he writes, noting that during the Dutch period, in contrast to strong caste divisions, ethnic differences between the two communities were largely absent. The conflict over locating Buddhist sites in northern and eastern Sri Lanka stems from attempts to recognize religion and ethnicity as two sides of the same coin, he says. Mr. Samaratne's paper, which provides detailed examples of Tamil Buddhist sites in Sri Lanka and provides a detailed account of the origin, evolution and spread of Tamil Buddhism to northern Sri Lanka, can be found here. An argument that Mr. Somaratne presents in that paper is that both the Sinhalese and Tamil sides, including some scholars, are reluctant to accept the historicity of Tamil Buddhism because of their own political goals. Some Sinhalese Buddhist scholars have assumed that the existence of Buddhist archaeological sites in the northern and eastern provinces where the Tamils live today proves that there were Sinhalese people there. The feeling among Sinhalese Buddhists is that Buddhism in Sri Lanka is limited to the Sinhalese. On this assumption, there seems to be a reluctance to admit that the Tamils were also Buddhists in the past, he writes. On the other hand, Mr. Somaratne says, the Tamil-speaking people who now enjoy these lands are also nervous about the discovery of Buddhist sites, fearing that popular Sinhalese politicians will use it for their political gains. A Buddhist past is distasteful to many Tamils today, so they are reluctant to admit that their ancestors were Buddhists in the past. Most Tamils in Sri Lanka today are either Hindu or Christian. Modern researchers on both the Sinhalese and Tamil sides are working on an agenda to prove their side of the story, writes the professor. It was against this background that President Wickremesinghe publicly acknowledged the historicity of Tamil Buddhism in the island. The president's comments were welcomed by many, including opposition MP Mano Gainson, who said that accepting Tamil Buddhism as a historical fact was a key to many crises. It appears that Mr. Wickremesinghe made these comments during a heated exchange of words with the Director General of the Department of Archaeology, Professor Anura Manatunga. Mr. Manatunga resigned on Monday, June 12, after a video clip of the exchange went viral on social media. During a meeting between the President and officials of the Department of Archaeology and several opposition MPs representing Tamil constituencies, the conversation arose regarding the acquisition of land by the Department of Archaeology in the northern and eastern provinces. According to critics, these land acquisitions are taking place under the guise of preserving heritage sites. The Department of Archaeology has been mired in controversy for years. Critics claim that land in areas marked as sites of archaeological importance is land legally owned by Tamil-speaking residents. Historian Dr. Shamara Wetamuni, speaking to Economy Next on Tuesday, June 13, said that modern scientific research on various archaeological sites in Sri Lanka has its roots in the British colonial period. According to Ms. Wetamuni, the origins of the Department of Archaeology can be traced back to British intervention in the 19th century. In 1858, the then governor appointed an archaeological commission to investigate the ancient monuments of Anuradhapura, and over time more government funds were directed towards excavations and restoration. In 1890, HCP Mr. Bell was appointed as the first Commissioner of Archaeology, equivalent to the present Director General of Archaeology. Historical sites on the island were not only studied for the production of knowledge. Instead, as Pradeep Jagannathan has observed, knowledge of history was vital to colonization efforts. Knowing the past was controlling the present, Ms. Wetamuni said. It was very relevant to the British interest in archaeology, as well as to the post-colonial state of Sri Lanka. Nevertheless, the British seemed to prioritize a Sinhala Buddhist narrative of Sri Lankan history, she said. Mrs. Wetamuni believes that this colonial legacy of prioritizing the Sinhala Buddhist narrative in the island's history continues today. A glance at the official logo of the Department of Archaeology will leave the curious in no doubt as to what kind of historical sites are receiving state patronage. Often at the expense of other archaeological sites, she said. As Professor Samaratne's widely circulated paper states, the conflicting interests of two historically based ethnic groups in the new Sri Lankan nation contribute to conflicting narratives about Tamil Buddhism and its history. It is well known that history and archaeology have been used for political purposes in nation-building programs. During the politicization of the Sinhala Buddhist nation, Anuradhapura was shaped by a new nationalist consciousness. This view was that the Sinhala Buddhist nation was a historically homogeneous and stable unit. The purpose of this interpretation of history was to establish links with the past in the imagined histories of the Sinhalese and Tamil ethnic groups. This has led to the rise of dangerous nationalism. Nissan 1989-64. Neither side is really interested in the facts of history. Because their aim is to use the name of history for current interests, he writes. According to the same scholar, Tamil commentators on Buddhist history in Jaffna have also used it for political purposes. He argues that the Tamils' perception of history in Sri Lanka must be understood in the context of the entire history of Sri Lanka within the rights of the Sinhalese, and states that the presentation of their histories is to show that they have a right to be in what they consider their homeland. They want to show that they have a right to be on this land. They seem to feel that the Sinhalese have stolen their history. To protect their rights, they are using history as a weapon for their own defense. As the Tamil people seek to prove their right to exist and their right to be there, historical claims about Jaffna's Buddhist heritage aim to prove that point. They want to justify their current homeland, whether Buddhist or Hindu. By interpreting historical facts amid attempts by Sinhalese Buddhists to bring them under a dominant majority with the help of democratic state mechanisms, Mr. Somaratne concludes. A collection of online quotes. If they don't even give each other, if Sri Lankans want this island, Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim burghers should stay together. If you want to recover Sri Lanka, don't betray. Don't let Sri Lanka become a playground for others and don't even give one to others. Sri Lankan governments should be very careful. This country belongs to our Sri Lankans. We have to solve the problems created by others ourselves. Others are there to make us Kabasania, not to solve our problems. Does Sri Lanka have a deep state? They should also be held accountable for these disasters. The responsible parties should be investigated. Those forces come to help a country only after it has fallen. America is giving ships. India is giving ambulances. Chinese ports are trying to help. Japan is not the only country, there are other countries. Heart from Sri Lanka, may the Hela Lankans win. Any political party or politicians on Sri Lanka never support Sri Lankans. Total of 21.7 million population never represents those beings. They working or will work to other powerful countries. Next time please consider this. Please drop caste and racism for living for life.